Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today we're going to be upgrading Annie. So Annie has had a few upgrades over the years, and I'm finally getting to a point in the design that I think we've got things pretty well sorted out. So I'm going to change loads of things all at the same time. How could this possibly go wrong? Basically, I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, there's a big change that needs to be done to the weapon. We need to get the weapon changed over so that I stop burning through belts. Because at the moment, I am burning through belts like nobody's business, which is really not good because it means that Annie can't keep the weapon going for an entire fight. And we really, really want that to happen. But also, I would like a bit of extra weight to put extra armor back on because there is one really big spinner coming up in our beta weight leagues at the moment, and every time I face Iron Tooth, Annie is getting bashed around to the point that all of the armor is breaking and nothing really sits right anymore. So to do that, we need extra weight. And doing that is going to be difficult because Annie is pretty optimized at this point. There is really not a lot of room left in here, especially once you get all of this wiring and stuff jammed into the kind of only available spaces left here. So yeah, the big issue actually really is just battery in terms of space, because this is one of the smallest batteries I can get my hands on, and it really only just fits in this space. There's a little bit of wiggle room front to back and a little tiny bit left to right. But yeah, other than that, we just don't have the room inside Annie. So I can't really shrink the chassis down anymore to gain any weight. So the only thing I can really do is change up this drive system, because at the moment we're still using 25mm brushed DC motors, and those are actually quite heavy. Now, what I would love to do is go over to a brushless system in here and have the same planetary gearboxes with a brushless motor on the back, but you can see how close this battery is in here. That is just going to lead to all sorts of complications and all sorts of problems. So as much as I didn't really want to convert Annie over to this, we're actually going to try and YOLO drive Annie off of these 25mm brushless motors that I've got. I wanted to try and get these guys in some form of gearing system, so maybe there was a single gear between them and the wheels, but there's literally just not enough space to have these in here. If I tried to put them outboard and then have a gear, the wheels would sit all the way out really wide, which would just be awkward for everything. And if I tried to sit them inboard, then there's no space for the battery. It kind of it hits along here. So yeah, we're going to try these out on Boris first, because obviously if they don't work on Boris, they're not going to work on Annie, and that is what Boris is for, testing out crazy ideas like this. The other thing we're going to do here too is we're going to bring back the standoffs. So in a past iteration, I removed this standoff, and Annie then started running around on the weapon bolt in underneath the actual weapon stack up. The problem with that is there's only 1 millimeter between these screw heads that you can see here and where the weapon bolt sits, which, hang on, here we go, this is the weapon bolt. And the problem with that is this weapon bolt then rubs along the ground, and in the arena that we're fighting in currently, there is not a lot of ground clearance, so this weapon bolt actually gets stuck on the ground a little bit from time to time, which isn't good. So we're going to bring back these guys, but at the moment the reason why these are gone is because when I sit the weapon under here, you can see that the weapon sticks out further past these standoffs. So I actually need to put a standoff to stick these out a little bit further and then have these stand off past that. So there's a little bit of work that we're going to do to get these guys in play. Anyway, that's enough yammering. Let's get the 35mm brushless motors onto Boris, see if these will YOLO drive, and then we can work out what else we're doing from here. Cool, so that has got Boris set up and ready to go. I've had to print some nuts for these because they use a really weird thread, but we'll see how those go. Those are just TPU on the front there. We'll see what those are like. But yeah, looking at the size difference between these wheels and the new ones, or these motors and the new ones, I'm not all that confident in this. These take up most of the diameter of this wheel, whereas the new ones are about half, and they're a higher kV. So there's a good chance we're just going to get a whole lot of cogging and not a lot of movement. But let's find out. So that was good and not good all at the same time. It was a good test, but it was not good because we can't use these motors. They drove pretty well for the most part. The problem is that at low speeds, there is a little bit of jitter, which means that you can't use them in a pushing match of any form. And I don't know, I don't really feel confident enough in Annie at the moment to remove her ability to push other robots around. So yeah, these motors just, they aren't the go for us for this point in time. I mean, if I could fit them inside Annie's chassis here, with enough space in here somewhere to have a gear stack, at least one level of gear stack, like a 3-to-1 gearing, it would be totally fine. But as I said before, everything is quite tight in here already. So yeah, either the wheels need to stick out a lot further, or we need to take up some of the internal space, which I possibly could do, but we're just kind of fixing Annie up while I'm waiting for parts. So I really just need to kind of get these repairs done, get Annie finished, so I can start work on the melty brain. Yeah, so that kind of kills off that new drive system plan, which, like I said, it's good and bad. Like, it's good that we were able to do this testing and therefore didn't spend a lot of time and effort changing Annie over to the YOLO drive only to have it not work in competition. But also bad because, yeah, we don't do this upgrade now. So then, I mean, that means the final things we're going to do here today are these little standoffs. We're going to buff these out and actually re-accent them, because at the moment, yeah, the weapon sticks out a lot further than those, which we need to fix. And also we're going to put teeth on these. So that means I've got a few little bits and pieces to get printed, and then once those are printed, we will have a look at all of that. Okay, so here are the new parts. We have a nice squishy, well, semi-squishy standoff block, and then the new leg. Now compare this to the old one and you might start to realize why we actually did this in the first place. So this is the old one. This is actually just a pre-LA print of what the new one's gonna be. Eventually I will CNC them out of HDPE, just like this guy. But in the old version, these holes were way too close together. And actually they're way too close together because of the internal design of Annie. And I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see this, but the bracket in here that holds the front plate on, it needs those bolt hole spacings to be quite close together. So that meant that the bolt hole spacings in this needed to be quite close together, and that meant that these broke a lot. And that pushed the weapon closer to the ground, sometimes making the weapon hit the ground, which is why they were removed entirely, because the new weapon stack up is lower to the ground. So any break in these means that the weapon touches the ground, and that is not good. But the new versions are now a lot thicker, have the bolt hole spacings a lot further away from each other, so there is a lot more plastic in here to protect against hits. Also, they're not actually bolted into the same bolt holes as the weapon mount, which means they're actually no longer critical to the design, and I will be able to replace them on the fly. So with these guys, which have got printed nuts or heat set nuts in the back of them, the two middle holes are going to hold the front axle, the front mount on, and then the outside holes are going to be what holds these guys, which means that if they do get damaged, I can very quickly and easily replace them, and also they're not a big part of the internal structure anymore, and also mean that there's not going to be massive bolts running all the way from the outside all the way into the inside. So that was a lot of talking to say not a whole lot. So let's get one of these guys set up and on Annie. because I am actually starting to run out of time. I have some parts now for the melty brain, so I kind of want to just hurry this along, get the stuff done so I can start working on the melty. Cool, so there we go, one new little standoff piece. Although I think one of my heat insert nuts on the rubber piece is actually in the wrong spot and it's causing it to kind of flare out this way a little bit. So the height is just not quite right, and you can see that by the fact that if I run it just on this standoff, the weapon on the ground runs into the frame of Annie there. So it's not quite perfect. We're getting close, but we're not quite there. So just need to kind of touch this up and maybe make these a little bit bigger eventually. But like that's probably going to happen off camera because I want to move on here. So also speaking of moving on, I have a new pulley, which you might be able to tell on camera has a whole bunch of teeth in it. This is literally just a test print part. It doesn't even actually fit the bearing in it properly, so I need to redo that at some point. But the point of this was to make sure that the belt slip doesn't happen. So if I try this out, if I try and actually force the thing to slip, it doesn't slip, it cogs like it. Hang on, I'll put this up right up to the microphone. You can hear it kind of like, yeah, jumps rather than slips. So that's great. That's exactly what I wanted, and it takes either having the belt loose to get the zipping, or you have to put a lot of force into it to get it to actually skip. It's a lot more force and effort than it takes to skip and slide on this guy. Like that's nothing in comparison. So that is a great next step. Hopefully this means that our weapon actually works a lot longer and a lot better in the next time. Anyway, that's really all I've got time for. Like I said, I've got multi-brain parts on the way and some in already, so I'm going to move on, start working on that. And yeah, if you want to see the multi-brain, hang around for next week because hopefully, all going well, there will be something multi-brain shaped on this desk next week. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you guys have enjoyed that one, and I will see you in the next video.